A college student abruptly gets up from a poker game, says nothing, and leaves the dorm. With a 5-minute walk ahead of him to his own dorm, somewhere in between, he vanishes, never to be seen again. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the New York Times best-selling author of dozens of true crime books. I've dedicated the past 26 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me next for this Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps shortcut. Adult missing person cases are difficult to investigate for law enforcement. So many variables are often involved. Most investigators understand, despite what families want to believe, that in some of these cases, the person they are searching for does not want to be found. I recall a case once where a guy in his 40s went over to see his mother and father one day, and the mother says, "Your dad is gone, missing. I came home, and he's gone." After a local search produced no results, the son, an investigator himself, decided to conduct his own investigation. Took him about 6 months, but he found his dad living in another town by himself in another state. The guy had decided to check out on his former life and start a new one, alone. If you recall back a number of years ago now, we began hearing about the alleged Smiley face killer conspiracy, which made all the usual internet rounds. The Smiley face killer theory, as it was known, became an internet-based true crime phenomenon solely based on hearsay, delusion, made-up social media content, and lies. I might say, wherever you add that word theory to something, it somehow strives to give it more credibility. So I want to point that out because using it here is disingenuous. The Smiley face killer scheme suggested some sort of a supervillainous network of serial killers behind the mysterious deaths of what theory spreaders claimed were over 70 college-aged men missing and/or found dead. Some research indicates that the theory was first proposed by 2 retired New York City police detectives. By their calculations, they allege the deaths of those college-aged men not to be accidental or alcohol-related drownings, as a majority of the evidence seemed to show, but were instead staged murders, sometimes marked by a smiley face painted near the scene. The fact of the matter is, however, the FBI has found no evidence to support such wild assertions, and the Bureau maintains with authority that the deaths appear to be, by and large, accidental. Slenderman was another internet-born conspiracy. Slenderman was often described as a tall, faceless, menacing, horror-like, suit-wearing entity who kidnapped children and stalked victims in wooded areas and made them do things by mere mind control. There are consequences here when we create such nonsense out in the world and spread it. We've seen this in the Nancy Guthrie case. People just make shit up, put it out on the internet, and sometimes it hurts people. It hurts families. There will be other internet-born conspiracies like the Smiley face killer and Slenderman in the future. You can bet on it. Look, I mention all of this because of the case I have for you in this Crossing the Line shortcut, and how those internet-based conspiracies can hurt investigations into what are genuine missing person and unsolved murder cases in which victims fit into the same demographics as those conspiracies. So I just wanted to point that out. On November 9th, 2002, Josh Guimont, often pronounced Guimo, and several of his St. John's University College dorm mates are playing poker inside a dorm room on what they called St. John's main upper campus. This was something the boys did every so often. Good, clean college fun. A card game. Josh is 20 years old. St. John's University, the one in Collegeville, Minnesota, is a sprawling Catholic university located on 3,000 acres of incredibly lush landscape with several lakes, like ink blots, scattered around the property. Founded in 1857, the university was hit hard by the Catholic sex abuse scandal, with the worst allegations levied against 9 monks living at St. John's Abbey, there on campus. Those allegations come in 2013, but the monks were on campus in 2002 when Josh is also living there. So I think it's important to point out that monks later accused of and, in a sense, convicted of savage, unforgivable abuse were there intermingling among the students when this case begins. And you cannot talk about Josh's case without mentioning this, because some believe that the sex abuse scandal could play a role in what happened. Published reports say Josh is a popular, well-liked, academically gifted student. In high school, he was not only class president, but valedictorian as well. That is a smart kid, no doubt about it. And how proud his family must have been of the boy to achieve such high standards. Post-high school, Josh heads into college with the aspiration of becoming a lawyer and eventually a politician. Josh was dating a young woman for about 5 years. He met her in high school, and she has become very vocal over the years about Josh and one of his biggest supporters. Some reports had it that Josh and his girlfriend had broken up just weeks before that poker game on November 9th, but other reports claim it was months before. I do not think the difference in time makes a big difference in Josh's case. So I just want to say that. From the dorm where Josh was playing poker on that night, it would have been a 3 to 5 minute walk to his dorm. Maybe a little longer if you've had a few beers or you stopped for a quick chat with a classmate along the way. But look, it was a short walk. At 11:45 p.m., Josh gets up from his seat at the poker table and, as one report put it, abruptly left the card game without saying anything to his friends. And that could be one of the most important comments made in this case. One would assume he was going back to his dorm to get some sleep, but we do not know this for certain. It's speculation. His dorm was located across a stone-walled bridge from the area where he was playing cards. Between the dorm he left from and his dorm building, there is a lake with that bridge going over the eastern shoreline of the lake. A bridge investigators in Josh's case are on record saying he definitely would have crossed to get to his building. I think the first thing I'll say about that is, if there's no CCTV, which I do not think there is, and no eyewitnesses, I don't think it's investigatively responsible to assume Josh crossed that bridge. Also, this is a main route, St. John's Road, and it cuts right through the campus on the east side between the two largest bodies of water. However, there is forest on both sides and no housing as you cross that bridge. For the most part, the entire campus is kind of secluded and almost like an island among many bodies of water surrounding it, with dense forest interspersed throughout. Born on June 18, 1982, about 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, Josh is a handsome young man with dirty blonde hair cut short around his ears, blue eyes, and well on his way to making a life for himself beyond the high school kid expected to achieve big things. He is in his junior year at the university. Josh leaves the card game near midnight, and between the time he walks out of that dorm and should have made it to his dorm 5 to 10 minutes later, if he was going there, he disappears. Poof. Gone. Nobody sees him again. Which is where our case begins. Let's take our only break of the episode, come back and go through what police know, how the case has evolved over the past 2 decades, and what new information law enforcement has released. You are listening to A Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps, Shortcut. Josh was missing for over a day before a search got underway. The FBI and over 100 National Guard members joined at least 250 local volunteers searching a 15-square-mile area on and around the campus. Even helicopters were seen making passes over the college grounds and using infrared imaging to see if Josh maybe lost his way in the woods, which seems very unlikely to me. After that, divers with sonar technology were brought in to work their way through that lake closest to the bridge they think he walked over or tried to walk over. I think the fact that all that time passed before they got going with this search, by no fault of their own, hindered any progress they might have made, because searchers found nothing. Unsolved Mysteries covered the case many years after Josh went missing. In that report, a private pack of canines hired by Josh's family was said to have tracked Josh's scent back to St. John's Abbey, where those monks involved in the sex abuse scandal I mentioned earlier lived. And also, quite strikingly, the dogs picked up his scent heading down into the lake behind the Abbey, which was frozen over at the time. They wound up searching the lake with underwater cameras, but found nothing. Josh's scent being picked up from the dorm to the Abbey to the lake is scary business. If that is true, it says something. Josh's family is on record saying Josh was outraged by the sex scandal, the stories he'd heard, an alleged cover-up going on within the church and university, and those monks involved. Information like that changes the entire dynamic of this case for me. My aim here is not to break new information about this case or investigate it in any way, but to keep the spotlight shining on it. Because I feel, as most do, someone has information that can break it, but for whatever reason is scared to come forward or simply chooses not to. That old cliche, somebody knows something. Just 3 years ago, an investigator working the case went on a local Minnesota TV station, Fox 9, and he presented an array of photographs he said they found on Josh's computer. These are all men in various poses, some shirtless, some in selfie mode, some posing for what looked to be a department store photo shoot, and so on. Some are middle-aged, some are college age, others in between. All races and social classes. Some even appear to be street dudes, those hustler-like kids who look like Backstreet Boys. The investigator claimed in that news report that they have chosen to release the photos because they have not been able to identify the men in the photos. I must say, if I am staying honest and impartial, a lot of the photos look to be screenshots from dating profiles. I'm not calling into question Josh's sexual preferences, his sexuality, or anything like that. Please don't read into this opinion in that way. What I am suggesting is, if you piece together Josh's outrage for the sex abuse scandal and these photos, you'd have to wonder if Josh was conducting his own investigation of some sort into the scandal. His father is on record saying Josh was researching a paper about the scandal. Raised Catholic, an only child, Josh, realizing the scandal had reached his doorstep on campus, could have led him towards wanting to get involved and find answers. Remember, Josh had that prosecutor-like investigative knows about him. There are some more wilder theories about Josh's sexuality and exploration he might have been involved in, but there is no evidence I have seen to support such claims. So I will leave those to the internet pile of slop we generally find within these open cases. My biggest question is, how does a 20-year-old college kid vanish without a trace from the campus of a major university, and there is zero evidence of what happened? Why is there no CCTV of Josh from that night? Why has nobody on campus come forward with any information at all? Doesn't seem plausible to me. The evidence left behind suggests Josh was summoned. He didn't close out his night at the poker game with casual goodbyes, grab his things, and walk out the door on his way to his dorm. He left abruptly. He also left his keys, wallet, eyeglasses, credit cards, and vehicle behind. It has also been reported that he didn't bring his winter coat and left his laptop open and still turned on inside his dorm. Within a few days of Josh disappearing, Stearns County Sheriff's investigators, spearheading the early investigation, come out and say they believe that he might have fallen into the lake, that body of water he would have crossed over the stone-walled bridge if he was indeed heading back to his dorm. But that, in and of itself, is kind of deceiving if you leave the comment there. Because when you look at the bridge, as compared to the waterline of the lake, the bridge more or less crosses over a muddy, swampy area on the edge of the shoreline, not directly over water. So to say he fell into the water is not productive, I think. They also searched the water and didn't find him. He's not in the lake, at least not that lake. What fuels this falling into the lake theory speculation about Josh as time passes is the fact that two other high-profile disappearances of college-aged men near the same time frame involved water. A kid named Chris Jenkins from the University of Minnesota and Michael Knoll from the University of Wisconsin also went missing, and both of their bodies were later found in waterways. But those two cases have nothing to do with Josh's. When we hear about college kids going missing at night after a bit of partying, we are generally given the explanation that they might have drunkenly fallen into a nearby body of water and drowned. That seems to be the go-to in these cases whenever water is nearby and the person is alone. My point here is to question that norm. How do we know in Josh's case? Where is the basis for that theory? Where is the evidence of it in Josh's scenario? One report claims that at the time, there was a group of men who came out at night and scoured the campus for college-aged males to abduct, beat up, and possibly murder. Josh's father told WCCO CBS Minnesota that even as a small child, Josh wanted to be a lawyer and would argue his position. Josh's father also believes his boy was set up, abducted, and taken away for something he found out. One thing that bothers me is that information on Josh's computer, law enforcement has said was wiped out, erased, and that an orange Pontiac Sunfire had been seen on campus on a number of occasions, dropping off students, and those students ran from security when approached. They ultimately found that car and the owner of the vehicle, but he had apparently destroyed the vehicle by then. If you know anything about this case or have any tips, contact the Stearns County Sheriff's Office at 320-251-4240. That's 320-251-4240. These cases, I'll say, are almost impossible to solve without help from tipsters. So if you know something, just come forward and say it. There are people out there who do. I am certain of that. That's it for this shortcut episode. Be safe, be aware, and be alert. Sources for this shortcut episode include WCCO CBS Minnesota Report, October 24th, 2022, KARE 11, November 9th, 2022, Fear, Vigilance, Hope, Pained Friends Do What They Can, The St. Cloud Times, November 17th, 2002, Josh Guimond's disappearance, still unsolved, CBS Minnesota, November 7th, 2017. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.